Well, good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. My name is Keaton Shaw. It's a beautiful day here in Trinidad and Tobago. Wonderful, it's a bit sunny. And yes, the dry season officially began on Sunday. And you can tell, I spotted my first bushfire yesterday. You know, sometimes they say in spring, you can tell it's spring because you spot your first robin, and in some European countries. Well, in Trinidad and Tobago, when it's the dry season, you spot your first bushfire. Well, you know, it's definitely in. Sahara dust is also still high, so please take all your precautions. So it's dry, it's hot, and yet still I'm smiling. It's just a beautiful day. Alongside me is my co-host and colleague, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Sean, good morning.
Good morning, Keaton. It's a beautiful day. I guess you could say, I don't know if it's if this is a lull period where nothing new and traumatic has happened to us. Of course, the Commission of Inquiry is still ongoing. I'm now interested because there are bits and pieces, Keaton, where if what is said is true, it causes even more questions to come up. And now the question is, how deep will the Commission go, at least to my satisfaction, with regards to some of the issues like available equipment with regards to rescuing, and as well as with regards to the proper procedures, and there's wider implications with regards to how safe are we in TNT, right? How prepared are we? Because okay, this is one scenario in the oil and gas sector offshore, but we already saw there was an explosion last year, early last year, or the year before, I can't remember, with Nikon,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And that caused the residents to be concerned. We are the owner and hub headquarters of the regional airline. And of course, we've had issues with our ferry service. We've had issues with our road networks. To some extent now, if we have roads that are going to be so easily collapsing, when do we start to ask as a public, well, what about the flyovers and all of those other parts of our road infrastructure? Are they sound? You know, do we have inspectors?
I take a look at infrastructure all the time, especially like the flyover at Grand Bazaar, the flyover at the curb interchange, and I'm wondering, are we maintaining that? You know, because even with respect to keeping the infrastructure in a state of, well, I suppose sightly condition, if you want to call it that, we don't even do that. But here's something to think about. We have all these issues, we have all these problems, and I agree. For example, roads in Trinidad and Tobago are absolutely terrible, appalling to say the least. Mm-hmm. And yet still, we are much better off and far greater blessed as compared to other nations.
That is
and
true.
I will elaborate further, but it now gives me, well, I have the honor, I suppose, the privilege of reintroducing, welcoming back to Talking Point for the first time, may I say, in about a month, and a deserved rest, if I may say so myself. Ms. Karen Nunes Teixeira is with us via Zoom. She's a former Minister of Finance. She's an attorney at law. She's an author. She's an intellect. And if I continue with her CV, then we will have no time to conclude during this show. But good morning, Karen. It's very good to see you once more.
Good morning to you, Keaton. Good morning to you, Sean, and of course to your listeners. I just want to add on that issue. I just came in late with the roadworks. What they have said is that the bitumen that Paria is importing, before Paria would get the bitumen from the refinery, mm-hmm. And I think there was an oxidization process. I think, I can't remember the name of the gentleman who explained it, but he said the bitumen that they are importing from Barbados and another place, Jamaica, it is not oxidized, and therefore it cannot stand up. It's wear and tear within a matter of months, whereas the one that was produced in Trinidad lasts for years. So that is one of the things they're saying about the durability of the paving in Trinidad, that is not standing up because the bitumen is inferior to what we produce because of our oxidization process.
I mean, I know this is not a topic that we were planning on speaking on today, but I will just add, while I do believe on the face of it there was reason to close the refinery, I think we've reached the point now where questions has to be asked with regards to all of the interconnected industries and services that depended on the refinery and its byproducts, really and truly, was it a net loss because of the fact that they were ancillary products? Now, perhaps still, if we see the figures, perhaps still the drain on the treasury to keep the refinery open might not have been worth it. But the fact that this bitumen thing has come up, and now we have to ask what else was lost.
When the government took the decision to close down the refinery, and you remember the communication coming from former chairman, Mr. Espini at that time, followed, it seems as though he had to keep changing his story. And even following the closing of the refinery, he had to come out, I think he had a 2-page article in the newspaper trying to give some level of explanation. When the government took that decision, and what I've realized, what I've learned, which probably is obvious to some, is that they never thought it through completely or entirely. Because all the other aspects of the refinery, as you just mentioned, ancillary products, we never actually planned for that. So when the Minister of Works and Transport and the Minister of Public Utilities, speaking on behalf of the Water and Sewage Authority, came out and spoke to the public, and their reasoning for roads not being paved, or from when WAS is repairing leaks in the road and the hole from the construction is left and not paved in time, is because there is no bitumen. And now what you're using is that you not only are using foreign exchange, but a product that was available to us before, and Karen has also explained that this morning, a high quality product compared to what we're importing. We don't, it's like we just don't think things through at all.
And just on that point, actually that information came from, of course, what was his name? He was former mayor of Point Forward, the fellow with the PNM. He was a PNM, and I can't remember. He worked in the oil refinery sector all his life. Mm-hmm. And he had done a video, and he explained that is what they did. But quite apart from that, what is also very telling is the Paria account. Paria is in debt. We're not just talking about a few millions. Were not able to pay their suppliers of that same fuel and all the things that they're importing to support our local market, but the Caribbean market of over 500 million. And they were saying that the Empire report, it said, so somebody leaked the report, I think, or maybe the chairman himself wanted everybody to know that the Minister of Finance was not giving him funding. Over $800 million, $500 million, which the suppliers were saying they were not going to supply Trinidad with the fuel, the diesel, all the jet fuel and so on, because they were owing them over $500 million, which the Minister of Finance had not advanced to Paria. So when they did what they did, when the minister declared that there was a fiscal budget, one of the things people have said is that he delayed the report on Paria, because if he had put in the report on Paria, it would have shown a significant deficit that it came up to $1 billion, $500 million owing to suppliers who were saying they were not going to supply further, and other expenses and so on, which the Paria report from the chairman, what's his name?
Parish chairman is,
George
yes.
Yeah, right. So you want to know about something, and then going out there now, suddenly to say that you want someone to buy the refinery. If the refinery is such a loser. Anyway, that's not what, I just thought I should say that.
Karen, even though this is something that was not pre-planned, I'm glad that you've raised it, because it's fine actually in instances like this. Sometimes, we often say some of the best shows that Sean and I have, some of the best discussions, it's unplanned. But I'm glad that you've also elaborated further, because what we've done is that we've closed the refinery, and the entire reason for the closure of the refinery, at least in my opinion, is mismanagement over the years and misappropriation when it comes to expenses and funding. The Minister of Finance, it's being stated that he does not release funds, but that is not only towards the Ministry of Energy and Paria, that's generally all around, because
yes.
I've heard with respect to the budget that he can call all these wonderful figures. They don't see half the money. But you close down Petrotrin, you open up two companies now which are struggling, two companies of which we've seen they don't even have the expertise or the experts. So you have underqualified or not suitably qualified individuals running these companies. But what it also
they're
tells
losing.
me,
They are failing financially, and not only that, they have made Lake Asphalt a ward of the state because Lake Asphalt is unable to produce the bitumen which they got from the refinery, and because they can't do that at a rate of $2.5 million a month, they're paying and I understand when the minister, one of the opposition members, asked the current minister, the ministry was transferred from energy to works, and they asked the minister of works, have you paid NIS? Have you paid the pensions? And they have not, from my understanding at that point in time, pensions and NIS for the workers of Lake Asphalt had not been paid. 2.5 million subvention for ward of the state, a bitumen that cannot stand up to use to any lengthy road usage, and a Paria that is highly indebted, cannot even supply the regional thing. And that was your answer.
We can't get
well, let me tell you,
country, can we?
from looking in from the outside, at very least you could say they didn't think it out.
Well, so they have a couple of big questions now that I want to ask. First
I didn't mean to add that.
First of all, the government, I don't think, could disassociate itself from some sort of responsibility when it comes to the debts of state entities. If the boards that were appointed were independent boards by independent commissions or whatever like that, then the government could say, well, that's not our debt on the books. That's those entities' debts. But the boards are political appointees, and the appointees have close relationship with the government. So that's point number one.
I would love to see the government try to disassociate themselves.
The reason why I say that is, first of all, those debts don't count towards our deficit, right? Because as Karen now pointed out, another set of debts. We know about EFCL. We know about the education system's debt. We know that the police, TTPS,
we know about MTS.
Right. There's
and we can go on and on.
The government owes TNTech. The TTPS couldn't pay their contractors, and as well as other state entities. And while we understand that yes, there was a time of needing to cut back expenditure, right? We know that there's debt on the books of various state entities. Some of that debt is actually the government failing to pay them, like TNTech.
I'm curious to know how much Gates is still owed, actually.
But here's the other question. Because we also know that, yes, as Karen pointed out, budget allocations are stated in the budget. But we know, at least with local government, that not all of the money allocated to them in the budget, or that what they were told was being allocated to them, was given to them. I think with regards to the last fiscal year for local government, approximately just under half of the money allocated to them they didn't receive. And since the year rolled over, it's more or less expected that they will never receive. So there is the other question. We don't know what our true practical debt or expenditure is. And yes, those are two different things. We don't know what our practical expenditure is, or all the allocations actually going out, and we don't know what our practical debt is. So our deficit or surplus is just an accounting trick at this point.
Now, understand that the word allocation does not mean available. Allocated does not mean availability.
But it's in the budget.
No, that is exactly the thing.
And the budget is what's being reported to us and touted.
When the Minister of Finance presents his budget, he's speaking about an allocation. At least this is what we expect over the course of the year, and this is the intended allocation. It does not mean this is what's going to be available. So that's one way But
doesn't it sound as though the figures that he's presenting and the reality seems to diverge way too much?
I completely understand that. I'm not defending the Minister of Finance. I'm just stating that this is quite a smart way of which you can relate to the people. Furthermore, when we spoke about the closure of Petrotrin and the opening of Paria Fuel Trading Company and Heritage Petroleum, for example, what I've realized, what I've come to learn is that, as I said, you don't think things through, and this is government after government. This is not necessarily this government, but we're speaking specifically of the example of Petrotrin, Paria, and Heritage. It is the same thing that's happening with the Water and Sewerage Authority, because I'm not entirely sure what restructuring is taking place. It seems as though they're just reshuffling, which again is completely different. But then when you take a look at the HTC, they're restructuring the HTC. So they're closing down one company whilst opening 3 companies, which falls under the brackets of the HTC, the Housing Development Corporation. Gosh, I would love to see how this is going to work out. Because if I was to take a lesson from Para and Heritage, HTC is going to be a mess. It's already a mess. It's already in a state. It's already fueled with debt. And guess what? It's going to be the same situation again. So the government has a smart way of exactly. The government has a smart way of writing off that debt and saying, hold on, we're going to freeze this for now. We're going to open up these 3 companies. We're going to go forward with it. It's a similar situation with the Education Facilities Company Limited. I look forward to see what comes out of that, because EFCL more or less is shut. They're not operating. There's a court matter right now that is taking place. We're yet to hear about that. But all of the projects are under MTS. MTS still cannot afford to carry all that is required of them because of budget reallocations again. And then what happens to all the contractors who are owed money from EFCL if EFCL is declared bankrupt? In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think they were declared bankrupt, and that's why they shut down. So, ladies and gentlemen, whilst all of this may not be news to you, you have to understand that whilst the Minister of Finance may suggest that we actually put money into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, we were $10 billion over our budgeted of 2021-2022. That's good news. Is it reflecting within society this morning? Do you feel it? Do you see it? Do you realize it? I'll simply conclude with this before we go for our first break. When you take a look at inflation, global inflationary pressures are really what's affecting Trinidad and Tobago right now. And we've done nothing internally. And I always go back to this very one point. When the Minister of Trade and Industry, Paula Gopi-School, was asked, what measures are the government implementing, or what are they looking to implement in order to ease the increasing costs due to inflation? The minister said that the government is reviewing it and will respond in 2 weeks. This is about 7-8 months ago. I'm still waiting for that response. And 2, she stood up in Parliament and she essentially read what I believe to be her thesis, if she, whatever it may be, by giving us the definition and the tenets of what inflation is. And quite frankly, up until this point, I wasn't looking for another university lecture. I was looking to see what policies you're implementing. I haven't gotten that up to now. Your government cares about you, and guess what? So does Talking Point. So we will continue the conversation after this.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website, fanzonett.com, to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WSN Content Capital. Sean Michael Small and Karen Yunus Teixeira and myself, Keaton Shaw, with you this morning for the discussion. Well, Karen just mentioned something with respect to breakfast. I suppose we're having a breakfast conversation. Karen, you know, somebody actually called in yesterday and requested, they made a request that they hear your opinion on, with respect to the government's nomination for to be the next president, Christine Kangaloo, who's currently the president of the Senate, and then the United National Congress, well, their nomination in Israel Khan Senior Council. So Sean and I have had a lot to say over the last 2 days. If you can just share with us your thoughts.
Okay, so my thoughts will probably be more from a legal kind of, legal and political, because I straddle both worlds. But from a legal point of view, the president is the head of state, is the head of the executive, is the repository of executive authority. He or she is. And to the extent to which that is circumscribed or limited by the Constitution, that is her or his power. And the Constitution clearly not only envisages, but contemplates that the person appointed as president could be and may be a political appointee. I say that for 3 reasons. Section 24 says that where the president is a member of the House or Senate, that person shall immediately vacate their position. So that means he could actually be a sitting MP, a sitting senator, and Section 24 provides for that. Secondly, we know at the coup, when Mr. Noor Hassan Ali, the substantive president, was out of the country, we know the legislation, again, I think it's Section 27, provides that where the substantive president is unavailable because either of illness or abroad, that the president of the Senate, and if not the president of the Senate, then the Speaker of the House. And the third example would be where there is a provision for removal of the president, where there is provision for that, and it reaches the point that a tribunal is appointed, which is hardly likely that would ever reach to that point. During that period of the tribunal acting, the president is required to vacate her office for that period. And who assumed that office? The president of the Senate. So there's no question that our Constitution envisages and contemplates that the person who can be president will come from the executive arm and actually could be sitting in the right as we speak in executive position, which would be the case with Christine Kangaloo. And why could that be justified? So I've tried to be fair in terms of looking at it from their point of view. From their point of view, they're really subordinate to the president because she is the head of state and she's the head of the executive. So how could you have an executive who runs rogue on you, who will not work with the government in fulfilling its objective of running the country as the executive, which is their responsibility? So as a consequence of that, you will find that the removal of a of a president is extraordinarily hard. I mean, it's you go to the section and you see it's almost, you can't remove them unless they resign voluntarily or for physical or mental incapacity. So once you put that person in, you can't get rid of that person. You can't do it like even with Okasi Paul. who was Speaker of the House, when they called a limited state of emergency to remove her because she wouldn't step down as Speaker. But they could only do that by proclaiming a state of emergency. But when we see the power of our president, that can't even be done with a president. So when you can't remove a president who was appointed unless he or she voluntarily steps down, even if there's good reason for that person to be removed under the constitutional provisions, when you also see that even though you have Section 80 that says that the president must act in accordance where the prime minister, where the cabinet advises the president must act in accordance with the advice of the cabinet. Even when you see that the limited powers, so to speak, of the president, and the president must act on the advice and where the prime minister consults, must do so. And that's in nearly every area. That is the case, whether it's the appointment of ombudsman, commissions. I mean, you could go on and on. But having said that, there are areas in which the president has discretion. And the areas in which the president has discretion are of great significance. And therefore, as a government who is the executive, it simply will not want to take the risk of a president who is going to hold you to ransom, who will act rogue. Because one of the things that we may not know, and we had that case with Rebane in 1987, even if the president is required to not act without consulting or getting advice of the prime minister, in most instances is required, the court cannot inquire, and she's answerable to no court, and the court cannot inquire whether that consultation took place. And that happened in the case of Bain. James Alva Bain, when Ellis Clark was the president, and there was a change of government to the NAR government by A.N.R. Robertson, and became our prime minister. Ellis Clark appointed James Alva Bain to a number of commissions. And A.N.R. Robertson went on affidavit and said, and challenged those appointments, and went on affidavit and said that the president did not consult with him, did not seek his advice, and therefore those appointments were invalid. And the court held that it was non-justiciable. In other words, you cannot inquire into whether the president did or did not consult. So can you imagine, as a government, even though you have a section that says that the president, except in limited circumstances, must act in accordance with the advice of the cabinet and the prime minister, you cannot inquire whether he or she did it. Rebane is the case. And on top of that, it is almost impossible to remove her. And why do I say that? Because unlike the case with Oka C. Paul, where they called a limited state of emergency to make a constitutional change to get her removed from the office of Speaker, for state of emergency, it is not only required that these are the areas of judgment that the president has. The president has areas of judgment. One of them is that a proclamation of a state of emergency is not valid unless the president has a written declaration saying that he or she is satisfied that the conditions for a state of emergency exist. So without that written declaration that he or she is satisfied, a state of emergency cannot be declared. That's one. The president has the discretion to appoint 9 senators. Okay, mightn't take anything much out of that. But we already saw with A.N.R. Robinson, when we got an 18-18 split vote, you have section, I think it's 8.2, where there's no clear majority of any party in the House. The president, in his own deliberate judgment, can determine which party has the support of the majority of the members of the House and appoint that person as prime minister, which he did. A.N.R. Robinson did that to the chagrin of the UNC who had appointed him and appointed the PNM. So the president, in his own judgment, can appoint a prime minister where there's no clear majority for whatever reason. The president can revoke and appoint a leader of the opposition in his judgment if he feels that person does not have the support of the majority, can either appoint or revoke that appointment. And the president, a state of emergency cannot be proclaimed unless the president writes a declaration that he or she is satisfied that the conditions exist. So at the end of the day, what I am really saying is, on the one hand, one has to understand that the executive is the government. The head of state and repository of executive authority is the president. You cannot have a president running rogue on you. You cannot have a president that is going to hold the government to ransom when it's almost impossible to remove that president because of the provisions. You need 2/3 of all the members of the House and all the members of the Senate to agree to the appointment of a tribunal. It's almost impossible. And as well as, where if you say that the president did not consult or did not seek your advice, you cannot go to court, and Rebane says that you can't do that. So I understand from the government's point of view why they would want a head of the executive to be one that will work with them and will not work against them, or will not take the risk that at some point in time that they will do that. And so therefore they have to protect their interests, and the legislation allows for that and contemplates that. On the other hand, it's the president just a figurehead. He cannot be just a figurehead, because if she or he was just a figurehead, those powers that I spoke about would not be given to the president to exercise her judgment or her discretion. For example, in the appointment of judges, she acts on not on the advice of the Prime Minister, but on the Judicial and Legal Service Commission. Yes, with the Chief Justice, yes. But you can't inquire whether she did or did not. So, in conclusion, on my point on this, is I understand from the government's point of view, the president being the head of the executive, the powers that the president has and protection the president has, you have to be very careful that you don't put in a president who will frustrate an executive in carrying out its functions. On the other hand, the fact that the president has been given these powers that are very important discretionary powers, very important powers which require the exercise of a judgment, means that the president is not intended just to be a figurehead. She is intended really, or he's intended really, to be more than just carrying out the role of, what the executive wants, but a protector of the people. And that is what a democratic republic is. It is a government of the people which is being executed through its representatives. So, in conclusion, on my point on that, I think the appointment of Chrissy Kanglu, who I like very much, and I like her husband very much, I am clear, I am very concerned, not only about the optics, but the extent to which she can be independent, and we saw that with Paula May Weeks. Paula May Weeks, I mean, that's a shameful thing. She was not even in government. She was a Court of Appeal judge. She herself had said, when it came to the acting appointments of a commissioner of police, wrote to the head of the Police Service Commission, C. Prasad, Trotter Bliss, is one of these sisters, I can't remember which one, and said in her letter that she is a creature of statute and she can only act within the four corners of the statute. And the statute does not give her the power to appoint an acting commissioner. Yet, when it came to the Section 123 of the Constitution, where the merit list was submitted by C. Prasad to her, and the same day that the Prime Minister admitted that he spoke to the President, she says that the list was immediately withdrawn. She had no authority to do that, because if you withdraw something, it means you were given it.
Yeah.
And if you were given it, Section 124, she says she's a creature of statute. And the statute says very clearly that upon that list being submitted, the president must prepare the notification to Parliament and for Parliament to debate. But because the Prime Minister clearly did not want Gary Griffith there, she then says it was immediately withdrawn, using the passive language, yet to explain what she meant by that, because you can't withdraw something if it wasn't given to you. And you said that you are a creature of statute. You cannot act outside of your constitutional powers. And the Constitution does not give you the power, once that list is given to you, to give it back. You have to prepare the notification. So my point is, really in conclusion, is I understand the government's position, but I also see that you cannot have it is not good for them, a democratic republic system that we have, to have an appointment such as Christine Gangu straight off the Senate to be our president, given the role of a president in our Constitution and the role of a democratic republic. And I am very concerned that that appointment is unique. They can do it. They're going to do it, but I don't think it is right.
Well, Karen, I want to thank you for your explanation because
yeah, that was a good breakdown.
I think what people have misunderstood, and I'm actually grateful to one of our callers from San Fernando yesterday. He called back in to say that we have not questioned the constitutionality of Christine Kangaloo being appointed as president. And we, here on Talking Point, we have not done that. We understand that it is within the Constitution that it is permitted. So that is fair. You also give
it's not only permitted, Keaton. The point I'm making is, and that's an important point, it's not only permitted, it is contemplated. And
Yes.
it is contemplated because as the head of the executive, you cannot have a head of the executive, although the powers are circumscribed, who is acting in a rogue manner, who is acting against the executive and running the government, and who cannot remove that president without great difficulty, and you cannot go to the court to say whether she consulted with you or not. So you have to be very careful about that.
I think that's understandable. That's why also I appreciate your explanation from the aspect of where the government is concerned. You can understand their position, and that's fair. You know, that's absolutely fair, and I'm glad you were clear on that. I think your last point in particular was the most important with respect to what Sean and I have been debating over the last 2 days. Because whilst we both, and I'm sure I can speak on Sean's behalf as well in relation to understanding your first point and agreeing with you with respect to the government's position, the more and more I think about it, and the more and more I analyze it, to me, a democratic republic, well, the strength of a democratic republic is being undermined if Christine Kangaloo is appointed as president. Because I will not disqualify her in terms of her background, her education background, or in that aspect at all. I cannot and will not disqualify her in that aspect. But if I wanted a president who will have the powers and the teeth of which you have just mentioned, I will not necessarily want that to be somebody who is not only currently a party card holder, but somebody who is also a former minister and a former senator. Sean?
Completely. That is it.
Karen,
That is it.
your breakdown has led me to get a theory of what I think to be the real issue here and how to solve it, because I am not entirely sure if this will go away. This just might be the first time this comes up, because her understanding of the government's position, I think, is more than valid, and it exposes an issue that we have with how our government is set up. But we have to take a break, so I'll get into that theory when we come back. This is Talking Point. Karen Shara, Keaton Shaw, Sean Michael Small. We will continue this conversation after this.
the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
On the next episode of Nicole Larson Live, Living in Victory Every Day.
I live with my dad at the time, so what is he going to say? He has invested so much into me and into my studies and, you know, where I was going in life, and then, you know, to come to him with these news. So the first thing I did legit after finding out I was pregnant was actually trying to make a call to see how I could get rid of it.
Which is that we shouldn't condemn others for the mistakes that they would have made.
Whether it's your savings or the business savings, deduct a small amount first and set it aside for a rainy day.
Replaying situations in your mind, questioning yourself if you did or said something wrong, pushes you right into the circle of anxiety.
From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God.
No matter what they say, living in victory every day.
Nicole Larson Live, Living in Victory Every Day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point. And of course, in our last segment, Karen had a breakdown where she pointed out two very important points. One, the fact that the government to some extent needs the president to cooperate with the executive in order for our country to function is a practical consideration, whereas the government or even the country might not want the president to go rogue. The flip side is there are practical powers that we, as the general public, and even Keaton and I to some extent, underestimate with regards to the president. The most obvious one is the fact that the independent senators are appointed by the sitting president. And I think this whole situation, because those 2 points, as Karen pointed out, are valid, but ultimately the optics and the risk of the president being too much aligned with the government for the rest of the country and what that means with our system, you know, it is begging us now to question this appointment, even though technically speaking, it's fine, there are provisions for it. And I think it's because at the end of the day, and it comes back to the origin of our system of government. Now, we got it from Canada, right? But Canada's head of state is still the Queen. Canada got their parliamentary system. King now, yes. The King. Parliament got their parliamentary system from the UK. And this is my theory. I believe that in the UK, ironically, they wanted the head of state, that is to say, the king at the time when they set up their democratic system, they did not want the king to essentially, ironically, be a government kingmaker by saying that I prefer this candidate or this party. So by the king, therefore, needs to be independent and show no bias to any political operator, political party, politician going up for the post of prime minister. Otherwise, then, that's big influence there in the UK. We see how beloved the royal family is, even though as an institution, it's still questioned what it is that they really do. We don't have that. Our president is not a member of a royal family. Our president is appointed by the government.
Well, the soon-to-be president is a member of a PNM royal family, if you want to look at it that way.
Right, but the point is, for the UK, the head of state is hereditary. For Canada, the head of state is hereditary. And because of that, they want that institution to be independent to the prime minister. That's their checks and balances, because we don't have a separation of the legislature and the executive. But our head of state is different. But we adopted their system. But where our head of state comes from, the nature of it is very different. So now, Karen is right. We have a head of state that we need to have some degree of independence, because some of the checks and balances you will want in a government is put into that position. So by choosing somebody that's aligned with the government, the optics are bad. Now granted, she might end up being like the example of the speaker from the UK, the Conservative speaker.
John Simon Burke.
Right? But we don't know if she will end up like that. We don't know. And it's, it's difficult to remove her as a population if we don't like the situation after the fact, as Karen pointed out. That's why we have a problem. I think the real issue is constitutional reform, because this could happen again. Because we do have to understand that the flip side is, throughout the rest of the world that doesn't operate under a UK system, as far as I'm aware, the head of state is elected. The head of state is allowed to be part of the political machinery.
We understand that constitutional reform. I think we've all understood. We all have, and I think this is where Bastio Pandey, and he stuck to this point ever since he's. I mean, I suppose he hasn't left politics, but he's tried to make a separation from himself in the political arena. And I think this is one of his best contributions post-prime ministership, which is we need constitutional reform. We understand that because, yes, our constitution was copied from Canada. It's a Commonwealth constitution. We never took time to write a constitution. We never took time to amend the constitution and frame it for Trinidad and Tobago.
But the key is, and Karen, this is why I like your point about the government's point of view. It's not like this in other parts of the world. The President of the United States is not independent of a political party.
But he's an executive president.
He's an executive president. And I think that
so that's why he's in charge.
I think that works out generally better than our system, because in our system, our president is still appointed by the sitting government anyway, so it's a weird amalgamation. Whereas at least in the American system, the separation of the executive and the legislature makes the checks and balances, I think, more organic and easier to maintain. What do you think about that?
You asked me that question yesterday, and I didn't answer it fully. And I'm glad that you raised it once more, because I said yesterday that there are benefits to the American style of politics and the American political system. One of the biggest benefits, as you would have just hinted at, is the mere fact that you can vote for the head of state, or as Karen pointed out, an executive president. So you vote for the head of state, but then you vote for your representatives.
Yes, separately.
Right? Separately,
because the House is separate to the president, a different party to the president.
If you've ever seen a ballot in the United States, it's one long sheet of paper. You vote for your president, you vote for your representative, you vote for your mayor, everything in the United States you vote for. On top of all that, what we saw during President Trump time is that the Democrats held, if I'm not mistaken, the Senate, but the Republicans had Congress. President Biden, on the flip side, the Democrats have the Senate, but the Republicans have Congress, right? And that's what we see now. What they're suggesting is that it's going to be more difficult to pass laws, not in the sense that there's going to be complete objection, but the mere fact is there's going to be more scrutiny because there is that separation. So if in Trinidad and Tobago you vote for your head of state, which is the head of the executive, whether it be a president, whether it be a prime minister, you vote for them. He'll appoint their ministers, as is what we currently see, but at the same time, you vote for your representative. And I am also of the opinion that if there is a separation between your member of parliament and somebody who is a minister, then you will get greater representation.
Karen, your legal hat, your political hat. Do you think that we should change to a system similar to that?
No system is going to be perfect because America certainly has its challenges. right? So we can't say anything is perfect, but the reality is perhaps the time has come for an executive presidency, because the fact of the matter is the president is the head of the executive. He is the head of the executive. And that is why you have provisions in the Constitution that says he or she cannot act unless with the advice or consultation, and must act in accordance with the Section 80, must do what Cabinet says unless otherwise provided. So there's no question that the government must want someone who is going to be working with them as the head of executive so that they can function. And there is some level of separation because we have a judiciary. Yes, the Chief Justice is appointed on the advice of the Prime Minister, but all the judges are appointed on the advice of the Judicial Legal Service Commission, of which the Chief Justice is only one member. So there is a check and balance with your court, your judicial arm of your Westminster system of democracy. All I would just say that I know Christine Kangaloo, so just for disclosure, I very much admire Cuban Garcia. I mean, on many levels. I taught him, he was valedictorian. There are many reasons why I have a lot of regard and respect for him. Can't say the same about his father. I had him as my campaign manager. It was a very terrible experience. And a terrible experience. One of the worst experiences I had, but I separate. So in this case, my position is not, you say without fear or favor. So without favor, because I do like Christine Kangaloo, I'm afraid if Paula May Weeks could do what she did, and she was a court of appeal judge, I'm pretty confident that with all due respect to Christine Kangaloo, that when the government asks her how to jump, she will jump how high. I'm pretty confident that that is how it is going to come across. That is how it is coming across. And whereas we understand that the president is the head of the executive, there are so many checks and balances in critical areas against the abuse of that power that I am so concerned that a person who has been so politically, with her father-in-law, with her uncle-in-law, with herself, consistently being involved in the politics, that I do not think it is good for a democratic republic system of government that we have to allow for her to be made. It is not right. It is not right, not only optically, but it is not good for the country. And I wish she would not, but she won't step down because it'll be looking as though she's being disloyal to the government. The government can't do it. We understand why they would want to do it. The Constitution allows for it. But is it the right thing? No, because there are enough checks and balances to show that the president should be seen to be independent enough. And we saw from the recent issue with Paula May Weeks, a former court of appeal judge, that you cannot have that confidence. And if I couldn't have confidence in Paula May Weeks as a former court of appeal judge to be independent, but she had no authority to do what she did, none whatsoever to do what she did. Unless she could explain to me by what she meant was immediately withdrawn. She hasn't explained what she means by that. But in point of that, I am concerned that Christine Kangaloo will not have the independence to do anything that the government says that is not to be done, even where she has discretion and judgment. I'm very sorry to say that about Ms. Kangaloo. I like her. I like her personally. I like her spouse. But unfortunately, that is my view.
Karen, I think your point about the optics, the bad optics, I think people need to understand. We don't even need any practical bad things to happen. The bad optics are bad enough that this situation is untenable. And this is what I don't understand with regards to our politicians across the board. This is not just an indictment on the PNM. To not understand that, look, why put yourself in a position where you will perceived to be wrong before anything wrong or bad happens? Why do this to yourself? You will be behind the 8 ball, and the slightest hint of anything that might seem to be a little funny, and the criticisms will descend upon you. Why do this to yourself? I don't understand. And here's another thing. I do wonder
she's putting herself in a Nur Hassan Ali, by the way, served on an NAR and a PNM government. So it is not. It is possible to do it. And you know what you're saying is this: that no matter if she's justified people will look at it.
Yes, exactly.
Why put yourself in that position?
That's the exact point.
I am confident that in the 5 years, that something is going to happen within that 5-year period, that people question ability to make decisions that are not carrying out the instructions of her prime minister.
But you know what's telling? I think 12 May weeks after that Police Service Commission fiasco, I do wonder, and the circumstances imply this to me, this is just my opinion, she might be running from the responsibility. I do wonder. She's like, no mas, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Sean, with all due respect to you, my friend, you are a very smart individual, but let's be practical. She ran from that responsibility for the last 5 years, right? There's been an empty seat.
Yes, but now the check, Keaton, is no longer worth it.
There's been the check was never worth it as far as I'm
concerned.
concerned.
For you, but for her. I'm talking about for her.
Then you must ask yourself, how come she was chosen? What is the relationship between herself?
And I think that was
exposed. The Prime Minister's spouse. I was in school with her, you know.
No,
I was in school with Paul May Weeks, you know.
Karen, listen,
and I know the group.
Karen.
I know the group she belonged to, you know.
Karen.
I know the group.
And Karen, we have to go. Let's end it there.
She stands by statute. She stands by the laws. And the relationship was revealed, following which, as a former judge and as an attorney at law, she gave back the merit list. That more or less says
What's the statute?
Let me tell you, but I am saying to you, when they chose her, I was in law school with her, and there was a group of people with whom she was very close. And let me just say, that must have been a consideration in appointing her. I shall put it that way.
Put it that way as it is, but as I said, somebody might be filling that vacancy on January 20th, the vacancy that has been there for the last 5 years. I keep seeing it. Anyway, let's take a break for news on the hour. When we return, we open up the phone lines. Karen, you give me a lot to think about. We'll be right back after this.
Your WESN News on the Hour. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Attorney says presidential nomination within the Constitution. Sangre Grande man fined $30,000 for possession of gun ammo. Tuco confirms plans well on the way for Tobago Carnival. And internationally, satellite images capture crowding at China's crematoriums and funeral homes as COVID surge continues. Now for the details. Attorney Martin George says the move to nominate Christine Kangaloo to the post of president is not an illegal one. This after several members of the opposition expressed their displeasure with the government's pick.
At the outset, that there is nothing legally wrong with the government making such a choice. And in fact, such a view is fortified and in fact enshrined within our very own Constitution.
A 27-year-old man who pleaded guilty to firearm charges before a Sangre Grande magistrate was fined $30,000. Akim Purcell of Jacob Court, Northeastern Settlement, Sangre Grande, was given 6 months to pay the fine or face 6 years hard labor. He was arrested on January 7th following an early morning raid at his residence where personnel from the Sangre Grande and Valencia CID, Eastern Division Task Force and Canine Branch executed a search warrant for firearms and ammunition. During the search, the team of officers and canine found a polymer 80 pistol, a Glock magazine and 11 rounds of 9mm ammunition. Tuco President Ainsley King says plans are well underway for Calypso and Carnival events in Tobago. He spoke with Tobago Channel 5 on the issue.
Tobago Zone Executive had discussions with the authorities here in Tobago, and plan is well on its way, right? So one could look forward to Calypso events in Tobago. Well, we had the Monarch in October, And what we are trying to do, because that period has demonstrated to be a better period for the sake of recognition. Because when we go together with the National Carnival, Tobago normally stay in the shadows or in the dark. So we will like that it was a trial, but we would like it to be successful. We would like it to be a calendar event throughout the years, because we have a lot of plans, and we see it as a better way.
And internationally, satellite images taken over a number of Chinese cities have captured crowding and crematoriums and funeral homes as the country continues its battle with an unprecedented wave of COVID-19 infections following its dismantling of severe pandemic restrictions. The images taken in late December and early January shows a funeral home on the outskirts of Beijing, which appears to have constructed a brand new parking area, as well as lines of vehicles waiting outside of funeral homes. Well, that's news to the hour in WESN. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN. I should let you know that the conversation certainly continued during News on the Hour, but we thank Denise, Martin, and Marquise Akers for News on the Hour. Folks, let's open up the phone lines now. Karen Yunesishara joins us for the first time for the year of 2023, and well, she has expressed her, what I may say is a very fair opinion, and what I also and I very much respect this, is the separation of personal relationship for what is best for Trinidad and Tobago. And I admire that and I respect that, and need I say, not many people actually, they have the ability to do that. So in that sense, let's open up the phone lines, ladies and gentlemen, where you can express your opinions and where you can ask your questions to Sean, to myself, to Karen, and we will try to answer it in the most appropriate way or as best as we could. In the meantime, while we wait for the phone calls to come in, and I may take Sean's messaging. Don't wait until the 11th hour to call in. We have a caller on the line with us from Tunapuna. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning to the panel.
Good morning.
Yeah. Morning.
Good morning.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. You're live.
Yeah, I'm calling in concerning the virus, and people are hiding and keeping secrets about it, right? I want to know, with Carnival around and our people, I don't know, but I think 2023 might be a deadlier year than the other years we passed. Right now, I'm very concerned, and we need information. We need a lot of information on how we can protect ourselves and our people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller. Like I said, the government is remaining silent because the mother of all carnivals, or the carnival train, is about to hit us. It's going to be a similar thing, at least in my opinion, as to what we experienced in 2020, where we knew about the virus, where the Minister of Health put his foot in his mouth innumerable times. Then there was this, after Carnival, following Carnival, there was an outbreak. Again, we forgot about COVID during the campaign elections in 2020. But let me just tell you, yes, COVID is on the rise. The numbers show that. Doctors within the public health system are warning that they are seeing increased cases. There are those who actually, as you said, remain silent about it, even if they're positive. And I can only hope that following Carnival 2023, and the mere fact that we haven't even addressed the situation with respect to those coming in from China as yet, well, I just hope, and I pray for Trinidad and Tobago.
Right now, there doesn't seem to be any variant that could cause a similar situation that we've had in the past. However, we have to look at what's happening in China, because that's going to be millions of new cases, and there might be a new variant that would be deadlier than what's spreading globally.
Actually, there is a new variant which is much more transmissible,
but
just not as deadly.
It's not deadly.
Just not as deadly. It's
We have
still
another
deadly,
call.
but just not as deadly. Call on the line with us from Shogunas. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
If Karen Nunes Teixeira did talk like that, the way she explained the role of the president, etc., before she ran for the parliamentary elections, I might have voted for she. No disrespect, but it's the first time I ever hear Karen talk to her. kudos to Karen this morning. But of course, there's concern as the role of the president and the president who the role the president could select the independent senators, etc. Now, of course, we must make mention to when Yana Robinson was president. Yes, the role of the president, it is a political role, and I see no problem with that. And if you will know, I listened to the Commission of Inquiry into Paria, that their report will eventually land up in the office of the president. Do what you want with that information. And I would just like to talk on Paria for 1 second.
Sure.
Listen to the Commission of Inquiry into Paria, and then seeing what took place in the social space. What we thought we knew, people commented without knowing, and then due to this Commission of Inquiry, we seemingly learn a lot of new things. Now, it is my opinion, it is still debatable in the public space whether the liability is with Paria or LMCS. I'll await the position of the inquiry. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kola, for your contribution. There's so much to discuss and divulge there. But Karen, I don't know how to respond. I don't know if you'd like to.
That's what you call a left-handed compliment.
I have to say, Kola, there has to be at least, right? I'm just going with basic law of averages, right? Without even thinking about it. I think it's safe to assume that there has been at least one other time where Karen has talked, if not just as eloquently as she did today, even better. So to say that this is the first time, I think,
listen,
you need to pay more attention to what the good lady says.
I respect the caller's opinion. Yes, I agree there's at least one other time.
And when I say at least one, it's not to say that there's only one.
No, but
I'm just saying it is automatic that there's more time.
All right, Sean, but I respect the caller's opinion, and I understand, and quite frankly, call in more and contribute. It's actually good to hear from you, and you liven up the place a little bit sometimes.
I will say this. The contribution was good.
We have a caller on the line with us. Good morning, caller. We do not have a caller on the line with us. We are sorry that we lost you, but please call back. You see, directors, I must apologize. As soon as you tell us there's a call, we have to take that call. We can express our opinions after. But whilst we caller, please call back in. There is time. There's just about 50 minutes left before we close the phone lines. But Karen, we have a call on the line with us from Dawadi. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
You're on the air. If you could mute your television, pay attention to your phone.
Yeah, I'm on the phone.
Yes, go ahead.
Television is muted.
Go ahead, caller. We can hear you. Good morning.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Creola. Happy New Year to Karen Sarah. And I just want to give my little input on the appointment of the president.
Sure.
I have looked long, high, and wide and deep throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and I have not found anyone that is not politically aligned. So, utilizing that criteria, I'll have to throw it out to the door. And I have no problem with the Honorable President of the House right now, and I wish her all the best.
Thank you, caller.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you, caller.
A very happy New Year to you as well. I think you are... a point that has been raised, recently is that there's nobody in Trinidad and Tobago who is independent. There's nobody in Trinidad and Tobago who is not politically affiliated. Everybody will have some level of preference. And I think you're right. Even if there is a preference, in other words, whether it be sometimes I prefer what I hear coming from the government versus the opposition. Sometimes I think the opposition is rather weak. There are many times that I would give opposition the credit and I say, the government, you're very, very weak. Does that make me biased? So what really constitutes somebody being independent and not holding a political bias? Caller on the line with us from St. James. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, Keaton, Sean, and Karen.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering whether the argument put forward by Karen and you two guys there, couldn't that those arguments be used against anybody that is being nominated for the president?
And this,
I think the problem is...
I don't know if...
Go ahead, Karen.
I don't know, can I just say, I don't know if it's an argument against. I think it was more trying to explain the government's position. I think the concern is, and the other caller said, is anybody truly independent? Yeah, that's probably true. But this is too much. It's too close. From Minister of Legal Affairs to President Senate, leaving there. No, it's too much. It's too... There isn't sufficient distance.
Blatant as it can be.
Yeah, it's too, yes. I think that's the problem. And it's not Ms. Kangalua, because I do like her personally. I do like her spouse, but I really think it is too political given the role of the president.
Part of the problem is it's set up that it's subjective. Now, in this case, it's obvious. But generally speaking, yes, you could argue that subjectively speaking, there will be no independence, right, with any candidate. But in this case, it's so obvious that we have to consider it.
Yes, yeah.
Caller with us from the Martin. Good morning, caller.
Well put.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Shera and young fine gentleman. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just calling to make a comment concerning this presidential appointee. I have no problem with both people they appointed, but the fact remains, is there any more ethics in this place again? People have lost ethics. I mean, Mrs. Kangaroo is a person, I mean, appointed by the PNM. She, as Mrs. Teixeira just said, that, you know, she went through all the things and reached that position under the PNM, and is a sitting person right at the moment. There cannot be any more blatant than that. So I think that, you know, I think a good person would have been for the job was Frank Sibasad.
I didn't know that.
Catholic, he is not Hindu, not Muslim, he's Presbyterian.
Is that the judge?
And,
yes.
And that might have been a good thing for it. So I also understand that Dr. Roddy made a speech just saying that Mr. Mark going to declare war and whatnot, and he is going to fight it with peace. P-I-E-C-E, peace. I don't know if he doesn't know the difference between P-E-A-C-E and P-I-E-C. So, something is wrong with this gentleman. You guys have a good day and continue a great job into the new year. I'm Sister Vera. Happy New Year to you, my dear.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Sean, you said you hit the nail on the head. You know, the other times you could say, well, is the person independent or not? But this is too much in your face.
Yes.
And I do too much in your face. It's too obvious.
But what about the caller's suggestion? And I also want to ask about another suggestion. But what about the caller's suggestion?
No, I would not agree. Not at all. But I don't want to. Yeah, I wouldn't want to say anything. I'm not the Attorney General. Justice is not a cloistered virtue. It must be able to be able to sustain the slings and arrows of the public. So I think Frank Sibasad, with all due respect, is promoted himself far too much. I've never seen a judge always in the papers like he has been, and that's not by chance. And I don't think that is what you want from a judge.
Well,
you want a judge to maintain a distance, and he has not. That's my opinion.
I think we can all share our opinion after this call. We have a caller line with us. Good morning, caller.
Hi, all. Thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
Officially, after you embarrassed me yesterday, I would like to wish the two of you and Karen a happy and healthy New Year. Okay.
Thank you.
That's that. Now, can I add to what Karen has said? Karen, I don't know if you itemized everything, the job of the president, but remember she deals with the constitution of a number of critical bodies, and I think people are just missing that, like the Public Service Commission, the Integrity Commission, elections and boundaries, judicial and legal, as well as the selection of the 9 independent senators. So heaven knows what will happen if they decide not to be independent. So I think people need to remember that. And as to the subvariant, Keaton, it's XBB 1.5, which is more contagious, but we do not know if more virulent. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, caller. All the best to you.
Just quick, I think outside of the World Cup, we didn't necessarily see an emergency come out of it. So, you know, we could be okay with Carnival. Maybe.
Ladies and gentlemen, need I still remind you, though we are not in a lockdown, we are still in a pandemic. Karen?
Just to clarify for the caller, and also for your viewers, all those offices that she mentioned are exercised by the president, but after consultation with the prime minister.
Yes.
And the legislation says that the president shall not appoint anyone except after consultation with the prime minister. So all those offices are still subject to the prime ministerial oversight. But as I said, if she doesn't do it or he doesn't do it, you cannot question it in a court of law.
Right, except the independent senators. I assume that is.
But I'm talking about the appointments under those commissions that you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's all done with the, except for the Judicial Legal Service Commission, the appointments of judges are done on the advice of the Judicial Legal Service Commission. But all the other commissions, EBC, etc., is on advice of the Prime Minister, which means she has to appoint them.
We have a caller with us from Shoguners. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Professor.
We're wondering, Professor, today's Wednesday. We're back out since Monday. We were waiting for you.
I was worried. Ironically, usually you miss Karen. That's the one day you miss. But this week, the one day your hair is with Karen. So that's good. That's good.
So it's your useless phone number you have. I have been trying and I can't get transferred.
Professor, I must apologize to you, but we are insane here at WSN. We stick to Bmobile and TSTT, so you know. Anyway, continue.
Anyway, I see you go back on this refinery and claiming that there was no reason, there was reason to close it down. I have proven to you all that there was nothing wrong with the core functions of the refinery. What caused the problem was when Malcolm Jones and them went and bring this jokified gas to liquid plant. That is what destroyed the refinery. All the reports show that. You tell you this, how much time? 32 or something.
Professor, I must apologize for having to interrupt you, but before you continue, I think you may have either not heard or misunderstood us. We haven't argued that there was absolutely no reason to close down the refinery, you know, and we're not saying that it's justified, not justified.
There was reason to close it down.
What we were saying is that, at least what I was saying, is that there are so many other factors and so many other things surrounding the refinery that was not thought of before they shut it down.
Professor, let me just say it formally. I am changing my position ultimately to say that regardless, I think it needs to now be questioned heavily given how things have unfolded. So I am no longer defending it with you know, completely that yes, it's fine, it was a fine decision and we're fine and everything was great and we need to stop complaining.
Can I just add?
So I am moving my position towards you, Professor.
Go ahead, Karen.
Can I just add on the Malcolm Jones? I think you need to advise yourself better on that because that matter went to arbitration. And when it went to arbitration, the court determined that Malcolm Jones had not willfully been negligent in the conduct of setting up that gas to liquid project. And in fact, he was successful and they were ordered to pay his costs. That's at the London Court of Arbitration, in which he was successful when Anand Ramlugh, the then Attorney General, took him to court as the chairman of that board for willful negligence in setting up the gas to liquid. He was found not to have been negligent, and he won his case.
What I understand.
Well then, you know what you should do. What you should do is what I have done is go and do some reading. And when you go and read,
I have done a lot of reading.
Okay.
All right. Before he has his point, Professor. Hold on. Let the professor make his point.
Make your next point, Professor.
Yes, Dr. Rowley himself.
I've researched it myself.
The reason for the problems there was the gas to liquids and the next one of those jokified decisions that Malcolm Jones made.
Okay.
And the Malcolm Jones case was withdrawn by this government from the court.
Okay, but do you have another point, Professor?
That.
Professor, you have another point on another topic?
No.
All right, Professor, well, listen, it's very good to hear from you.
Yes, I'm very glad for you.
Good to get back on.
I really hope that well, you're sounding a lot better, and I really hope that your health continues to improve. But it's good hearing from you.
Thank you.
All the best for the year.
Thank you, brother. We will make requests with our producers and staff with regards to the phone lines, and try to get that situation improved. However,
I am so
we could
sorry.
tell you that, yes, people behind the scenes have been trying to work on this, and it is not our fault that it has reached
You
where
know
it
what?
has
No,
reached.
we have made innumerable requests with our producers, with our directors.
And they have tried to go to the phone company to address it.
Let me finish. Essentially, yes, what he's saying is true, but I think that's understating it. They have called, they have sent emails, they have made every single inquiry, they have spent hours on the phone with TSTT, who seem to have everything mixed up and messed up. They have worked tirelessly and endlessly. In fact, even for the last week when Sean and I weren't here, one of our directors stayed here to try and fix the situation internally because it's TSTT's wireless, apparently. And honestly, we will try again, but it's not us, it's TSTT. We're trying, we're working on the situation, and I don't know, absolutely terrible, absolutely appalling service. Very, very, and why make bones about it? Call online. San Fernando, good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Shara.
Good morning.
Well, I said enough on on that topic for 2 days, so guys, I have nothing to say on that. What I wanted to say is this to you, Sean.
Yeah.
On the lead up to Christmas, you went to Tobago.
Yes.
We looked at you on through your computer. You know what I would like you to do, Sean? One of these days when you'll have the time and put it in the program, for you to discuss some of the inefficiencies or what you see that needs to be fixed with respect to the service in that industry in Tobago in particular.
Tourism or the
that is
ANC
something
bridge?
that we need to discuss because the potential is there.
Yes.
But there's a problem with the service, and seeing that you showed us that you were in the bowels of it, so to speak. I would like you to have a discussion on that one of these days.
What service, precisely what service do you speak of? Which one in particular?
The tourism in Tobago, or the customer service in Tobago, or the ANC bridge?
The customer service with respect to the tourism sector.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from. But we'll talk to Sean about that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we do bring up that topic every now and then, but
in
we
this
will bring it up again.
But as a major, because we are slowly becoming a country where is a place where the best leave and is the rest here.
Yes.
And we need to hone in on some of these issues.
Caller, let me correct you. We're not slowly becoming. We have become that.
Yeah.
So
even our customer base, for the most part, the best customers in the region go elsewhere, and we get our loyal niche. Let me put it that way. Our loyal niche. That's what we. At one point, we got some of the worst customers, but right now, what we have is a loyal niche of customers from Europe that like what we have to offer, but not enough people know about it. That's one. And then the second thing, I don't want to go too much, we're still recovering from COVID in the tourism sector. So that's compounding a lot of issues.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. I think also prior to COVID-19,
we've had issues before.
Prior to COVID-19, you're recovering from COVID-19. That's all well and understood. No bones about that there. But prior to COVID-19, even the rooms in Tobago were pathetic. And they, not trying to be unkind, but considering that we're a tourist island and we're marketing Tobago as a tourist island, I know that you might want to defend it, and rightfully so, you can. But me, as a local, me traveling and going to Tobago, the sister isle, and an island which I love and I think is absolutely beautiful, the rooms are terrible.
You'll be surprised. Apparently, in other Caribbean islands, the rooms aren't anything hot either.
Well,
the difference is...
I can't speak for that. I speak about my sister isle.
The difference is their product overall is better positioned than ours for a few reasons.
So we don't talking about hotel rooms.
Yeah,
that's true. It's about the service, and I will get into that. the long and short too is some of the same imbalances in our labor and private economy is also affecting Tobago. It's just we're seeing it differently because it's a different type of product. But we'll get into that at a different date.
I think this is where we'll have to close actually because of the time. But I want to thank all the callers for their contribution this morning. Very good points being raised with respect to how could you really tell if somebody's independent? I mean, the caller from San Fernando yesterday suggested, listen, we thought Paula May Weeks was independent. It turns out that that wasn't necessarily the case. At least the perception seems to be otherwise. But Karen, thank you very much for your explanation. Also, Sean gave us a preview to his dance for Carnival this year when the caller was speaking about ethics. Please don't do that again. I beg of you. If you start that, I will do dad jokes. So you have a choice.
What do you mean? You always do dad jokes.
Yeah, you have a choice. But Karen, good seeing you once more. Thank you so much for your contribution. And we look forward to seeing you again on the program next week.
Yes, I was happy to see you on first show for 2023.
Yes.
And a good topic, and glad to be back.
Certainly. Sean Michael Small, good luck, my friend. You have a long way to go with that dance, but, you know, once more, excellent contribution.
That is a feeling, that is movement to express unbridled agreement and exasperation.
Well, I wonder if the doctor can recommend something for that movement. But anyway, as I conclude, simply say, thank you very much.
I'll accept his prescription when he prescribes you something for the dad jokes you mean.
Thank you very much to all our callers for their contribution. Thank you to our directors, not only for guiding us during Talking Point, but also really trying hard to fix the situation with TSTT and the phone line. I don't know what more I could say about TSTT. Bmobile used to be the bigger, better network, and anyway, whatever.
Kitan, read between the lines. That's all I'll say. Read between the lines.
Folks, remember, today is a good day to have a good day. We can make it if we try just a little bit harder, and you can make it. You just need to put your best foot forward and maybe change your way of thinking a little bit. Folks, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN